This is Sigmund Freud. What if Freud was wrong? This question has been around ever since the publication of Freud's first overtly psychoanalytical papers in the late 1890s. Today, it is being asked with unprecedented urgency, thanks to a coincidence of developments that raise doubts not only about Freud's methods, discoveries and proofs, and the vast array of therapies derived from them, but also about the lasting importance of Freud's descriptions of the mind. The collapse of Marxism, the other grand unified theory that shaped and rattled the 20th century, is unleashing monsters. What inner horrors or fresh dreams might arise should the complex Freudian monument topple as well?
I think it could be easily demonstrated that there's a direct connection between the infusion of this therapeutic psychology into the classroom and the decline of American literacy. One test after another in international competition keeps showing the American youngsters at or near the bottom, but their self-esteem is off the charts. They just think they're wonderful. I guess I get the feeling that you're saying you really hate your mother. What's that got to do with academics? Nothing. Well, when that becomes the norm in the classroom, you can kiss goodbye to academics, you can kiss goodbye to civilization.
What is happening to us is too much psychology. What follows is truly the untold story of psychology in America. Sigmund Freud and his followers, one of which was Dr. William Coulson. Please meet Dr. William Coulson.
My name is R Coulson. I'm a psychologist and director of the Research Council on Ethnopsychology in California. There was about to be born in the year 1912 the journal Imago, and the prospectus for Imago spoke of the idea of psychoanalysis replacing organized religion. That was the goal. It hasn't happened yet, but that was very much the goal and remains so. I'm a bit of a psychological journalist myself, and for about 20 years was very much involved with a psychologist by the name of Carl Rogers in presenting a program of facilitator training. And my job was, among other things, to edit the newsletter that we put out, our own version, as it were, of Imago. In 1979, we published the following report from a Baptist pastor from Tennessee who came to our facilitator training program in California. It was a critical report about what he picked up, and I think you'll see that there are echoes of Sigmund Freud's program of replacing religion with psychology in what this pastor wrote. Quote, I had just finished a non-encounter group where most of the people practiced jargon. They related very well to phrases such as living in the now, getting rid of unfinished business, dismissing my oughts and shoulds. My primary commitment is to myself. I can't assume responsibility for how you feel. I've learned not to feel guilty about things like that. All rationally, quietly, and seriously done, the pastor wrote. Of course, seriously done, he added, for this is essentially religious business with its own ritual, myth, and promise of deliverance. As I listened and observed in that encounter group in California, what the gospel seemed to be about was this: the hope of entrance into a sweet Beulah land of narcissistic individualism where one did not have to worry about sticky commitments or the inevitable ambiguity of good and evil. It's good and evil that seem to have now been ruled out of order by Freud's influence on American society, as I am a critic of my own profession of psychology, to the extent that both professions exceed their bounds and try to take over for the church and for the home. Several years ago, I served as supervising psychologist at a so-called Christian Growth Center at La Jolla Presbyterian Church. And what happened, I fear, is that the ministerial staff began referring people for counsel to the psychologist, rather than offering counsel to parishioners on the basis of biblical principles. Everything became self-exploration. It's really quite a deadly proposition. I did a book once called A Sense of Community, and I sent it off to a Catholic publisher before we happened to work it into our own series of education textbooks. But the publisher said that the whole thing was utter garbage, and pointed out that, among other things, it flirted with sex among the clergy. This was the Catholic clergy. Well, I think this has all come home to roost now. You know, we've got these 400 accusations of priestly pedophilia. We've got the Catholic Church in America having to pay out a reported $400 million in settlements. It's all because of the influence of psychology. Set aside the commandments was our advice, and get in touch with the feelings. Well, that's only good advice if we aren't sinners, but all of us are, as we've learned to our great distress.